Alright, so we're going to be making a Shepard tone today, and before we get started on that, I just wanted to kind of show you the finished product in Audiotool. So here we have a pretty simple layout. We're going to be using 3 of these modules here called the Heisenberg, and a reverb, and just some clever MIDI programming, and it is going to end up sounding like this. And I know you want to listen to that all day long, but we're going to get into programming this thing. One thing I want to point out is if you notice, as it loops back, it continues to rise, and that's the key behind a Shepard tone. So let's get into programming this beast. I'm going to go ahead and close out this session, and we're going to enter the studio and create a brand new session. So new project. And the first thing you should always do in a project is save it. So we're going to go ahead and save it. And for this assignment, I want you to use your name. So my name is Ryan. And Shepard tone. Okay. That's it on that. And I always like to pull the headphone guy over here just so it's out of the way. And next thing, you're going to go up to project and invite me to be an editor. So you'll type in fast forward music, and I should pop up down here listed as an editor. Then click on save changes. And now we're ready to get kind of setting up. This first video is just going to focus on the setup, and then I'm going to create a second video which will kind of go into the fine-tuning and programming everything. So the first thing we need to do is come over here on the right hand side, this purple synthesizer called the Heisenberg. We need 3 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag one. This first one that we drag in, notice it's in input 1, and it automatically should create a note track for you. If it does not, just go to the device and 2-finger tap and select create a note track so that you've got a note track down here. Before we drag the other ones on, I'm going to name this one. This one's going to play a very specific role in our sound. So I'm going to go to right here where it says Heisenberg, double click on that, and this is going to be our high tone in the Shepard tone. So this is going to be the high one, this first one. Then I'm going to come back here to the right hand side. We're going to grab another Heisenberg, and this one I'm just putting below. It should plug itself into number 2. And again, I'm going to come over here and name this one. This one's going to be our low tone. Oops, that didn't take. Low tone. Make sure you hit enter. And then finally, one more Heisenberg. I'll put down here at the bottom. And this one is going to be our midtones. And plural on that one because it's going to be multiple. I think it's a good idea to name those just because when we get programming these sounds, it's going to get a little bit complicated. So it'll be good to just look over here and know which one is which. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get our sound kind of dialed in. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about these modules and kind of how to make sense of them. There's a lot of knobs on here if you zoom in on any one of these. And what we want for our Shepard tone just to start is a nice smooth sound. And so I'm going to go ahead and 2-finger tap on the Heisenberg and show the software keyboard. And that'll bring up this little guy on the side, which then you can play this synthesizer with your keyboard. Okay, so that's what that sounds like right now. What I want though is I want like a nice smooth sound. You can hear like when I play this, it kind of has a tick at the beginning of it. And I don't want that tick. I want like a nice smooth kind of woo sound, right? And so I'm not going to get into all the specifics of this because this is actually a pretty complex synthesizer. But there will be a few key things that we want to do. So first of all, these little look like Pac-Mans almost. These are your volume knobs for the various tones. This synthesizer's got 4 different waveforms that you can kind of combine to get your overall sound at once. And we're just going to use one of them. And just for simplicity's sake, I want to use the A waveform. So this one that's on the top here. So if you've got any of these little Pac-Man guys, these are the volumes on those other waveforms. Just click on them and drag down until they're totally gone. And then you want to turn up waveform 1 all the way. Okay, so it's all the way up. The rest of these are off. And then we're really just dealing with whatever we program on this top line here will be the sound that we hear. Okay, so a couple things. This is your waveform. If you click on that, you got all these different kind of waveforms, and they sound a lot like they look, I think. You know, like these very smooth waves like this, called the sine wave. It's got a very smooth sound. A little bit more jagged. The triangle's got a little bit more edge to it. The sawtooth has got a lot of edge, the reverse sawtooth. And there's a lot of different various waveforms down here, and we're going to mess around with those a little bit later. But for now, we're just going to start with the very basic sinus waveform, just like that. On your semitone, if you will double-click on that, and a big long number appears, just hit 0. So that's 0 all the way straight across. Offset should also be 0 all the way straight across. Okay. And make sure your pitch is highlighted on. All right. So we've got all this, and let's see what our sound sounds like now. Right, it's a little bit smoother sounding, right? It's still got an edge. It sounds like something's being bonked, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to the envelope section. And this is what we call an ADSR envelope, which stands for attack, decay, sustain, and release. And these are the different parts of the sound as you first hit the key. The attack is that very first part of the sound. And then once that sound gets really up to its full volume, then we have the decay, which is when it kind of like settles down a little bit. The sustain, as you hold the note, how it sounds. And then the release, when you let go of the note, how long does it kind of hang in the air. And to describe this a little bit, I always like to think about a drum sound. You know, when you hit a drum with a stick, the very first second you hit it is very loud, that first initial contact of the stick on the drum skin, and that's like the attack, right? And then the decay is when the drum head starts vibrating, okay, and that tone of the drum starts kind of taking in, and it actually drops in volume just a little bit after that initial stick strike, and then the drum starts to vibrate and resonate a little bit, and that's the decay, and then into the sustain. And then as that sustain starts to kind of fade away, that's the release, and then finally it's silent, right? So if you can just think of like hitting a drum one time and what the sound kind of does, that's what we're kind of shaping the note to do here. So the first thing we want to do with our attack is I want this to be a slower attack. I want it to kind of ease in, and let me show you what this does. So again, here's what our note sounds like right now. Okay, so I'm going to click on this kind of empty bar right here above attack, and I'm just going to drag this out. I'm going to drag it out to about let's do about 955 milliseconds. The number doesn't exactly matter, but I just wanted to get around 1,000 milliseconds. Listen to this now. See how it doesn't have that strong attack? Let me take it back again. So it really kind of bonks at the beginning here. When we drag this out, I'm going to do a really long one now. I'll go close to 3,000 now. Here it kind of like slowly gets into full volume, right? So that's what we want to do with the attack. The decay actually doesn't matter too much because we're going to take our sustain and we're just going to drag it all the way up to the very top. You can just click on that. The sustain does not have a bar in the middle, by the way, that you can drag back and forth. Just the attack, decay, and the release do. So finally, on the release, it's actually looking pretty good. But the release is, you know, when you let go of the note, how quick does it end? So if I have 0 release, as soon as I let go, it just suddenly stops, right? If I pull that out a little bit, though, and the release, and it kind of hangs in the air a little bit longer, right? And that's more what we want. So make sure your release is, you know, right in between 2,000 and 3,000. Probably should be fine, anywhere in that range. And that's just going to create these nice kind of slow sounds that kind of hang in the air for a while. Okay, so basically we need to get that similar kind of setup on each of these Heisenbergs. So I'm going to go through that a little bit faster again, but you'll get some practice on this. So let's go up to our low tone, which is the next one up, and we're going to do the same thing. So look, it's already set to sine wave, 0 on the semitone, 0 on the offset. Make sure pitch is on. The volume's already up. Okay, so attack again. We're going to pull it out to about 2,000-ish. And we're going to pull our sustain all the way up, and our release we're going to pull out to between 2 and 3,000, somewhere in there. Okay, good on that. And then finally our high tone, same thing again. Make sure you're on sine wave, 0, 0, pitch is on, volume's all the way up. Our attack, we're going to pull it out to about 2,000. Sustain all the way up, release about between 2,000 and 3,000. Cool. Okay, so they should all kind of sound like kind of ethereal, wavy kind of sounds. So that's our first main setup here. And we're going to do one more thing real quick before we end this video. We need to get a reverb plugged in. So the reverb that I like to use for this one's a little bit more fancy than your standard reverbs. It's the Quasar reverb. And I'm going to go ahead and click it, and I'm going to pull it right over here. We're going to use this reverb in a new way. We're going to use that as an insert or an aux send. And I'll explain this a little bit more when we start shaping the sound in the next video. But for now, let's get this plugged in so that it's ready to go for us. So if you look on the right-hand side of your mixing board here, there's an aux send 1, and there's an arrow out and an arrow in. So the arrow out we want to send to the in of our reverb, and then the out of our reverb we want to take back to the aux 1 input. And basically this is going to send signal from our mixing board to the reverb and then back in so that we can mix in that reverb sound later. And we will mess around with these tones and kind of dial that in the next video, and we're shaping our sound. So altogether, this is what you should have. You should have 3 Heisenbergs with the sound set up on them, a reverb plugged into your aux 1 in and out, and we'll be good to go for the next video. So tune in for that one next.